Every empath believes their light is what keeps them safe. They believe that compassion, understanding, and healing are their greatest protection in a world that can be hard and cruel. But there is something beneath this light that most empaths do not want to look at. Something that has been there from the very beginning. I have watched many empaths discover, often painfully, that their light was not born entirely from purity. It was shaped in response to something dark. And without realizing it, they entered into a silent agreement with that darkness. I call this the dark contract. The dark contract is simple, though it hides itself well. It says, if I am endlessly good, endlessly understanding, endlessly selfless, I will not be abandoned, I will not be harmed. This is not conscious. It begins early, often in childhood, where love may have been inconsistent, conditional, or entangled with chaos. The child learns that their safest position is to become the caretaker, the harmonizer, the one who absorbs and soothes the pain of others. Over time, this becomes an identity. The empath grows into adulthood, believing their light is their true self. And yet, somewhere beneath it, there is still that contract. A silent belief that their goodness is what earns them safety, love, and belonging. The danger of this contract is that it is written in the shadow. It binds the empath to patterns that drain them, trap them, and attract people who sense their willingness to overgive. The narcissist, the wounded manipulator, the perpetual taker, all of them are drawn to this light because they recognize what the empath does not. The light is not free. It is tied to a bargain that can be exploited. To understand the dark contract is not to condemn the light, it is to see what fuels it. Only when the empath becomes aware of the silent agreement beneath their kindness can they step out of it. This awareness is unsettling. It feels like a betrayal of the very identity the empath has cherished. But it is in seeing this truth that freedom begins, because the light was never meant to be a currency. It was meant to be a natural expression and not a payment for safety. The question becomes, what happens to the empath's relationships when the contract is broken? The dark contract asks for constant payment. It is not a one-time exchange, but an ongoing demand that the empath stays in roles that exhaust them. And because the agreement is unconscious, the empath mistakes this payment for virtue. To keep the contract, the empath overextends. They listen when they are drained. They forgive when trust has been broken. They smooth over conflict that is not theirs to resolve. They believe they are choosing compassion, but in reality, they are honoring an old bargain made with fear. This bargain shapes every layer of the empath's life. It influences the partners they choose, the friendships they maintain, even the work they pursue. They are drawn towards situations where their role as the giver, the healer, the light bearer is required, because this role feels safe, familiar. It keeps the contract alive. But there is a cost. Physically, there is fatigue, tension, even illness that comes from carrying the weight of others for too long. Emotionally, there is the slow erosion of self, a constant suppression of their own needs, desires, and boundaries. Spiritually, there is a quiet resentment that builds beneath the surface, even as they smile and serve. The contract also distorts relationships. People sense the empath's light, but also sense the hidden bargain beneath it. Some will exploit it without hesitation. Others will unconsciously respond to it, falling into roles where the empath gives and they take without questioning why the balance never shifts. The contract binds the empath to their persona, the socially acceptable mask of goodness, while their shadow, carrying their resentment, exhaustion, and unmet needs, grows heavier in the unconscious. The greater the split, the more likely the empath is to experience burnout, disillusionment, or sudden emotional collapse. Many empaths reach a breaking point. They discover that no amount of light is enough to keep them safe, that their constant giving does not prevent betrayal or abandonment. This is the moment the contract begins to crack. The cost of keeping the contract is everything the empath hoped to protect: their peace, their energy, sometimes even their identity. And when the contract can no longer be maintained, they face a choice: either double down on the bargain, giving even more, or face the fear that kept it alive. When the empath finally sees the dark contract for what it is, the first instinct is often disbelief. How could something they thought was their highest virtue also be a source of bondage? But once this awareness settles, the breaking of the contract begins almost naturally. Breaking the contract is not about rejecting the light. It is about removing the conditions attached to it. The empath begins to see that their worth is not tied to how much they can give or how much pain they can absorb. Their light becomes an authentic expression again, not a survival strategy. At first, this shift feels unstable. People who have grown accustomed to the old agreement will resist it. Friends who relied on the empath's constant availability may accuse them of being cold or distant. Partners who benefited from the imbalance may escalate their behavior in an attempt to restore the dynamic. But this resistance is part of the process. It reveals who was connected to the empath's true self and who was attached only to the benefits of the contract. As the contract dissolves, the empath experiences something unexpected: space. Space for their own needs, their own desires, their own rest. They begin to explore relationships that are mutual, where care flows in both directions. Breaking the contract also alters the empath's inner landscape. They no longer feel the compulsive need to fix or save others. They can witness pain without taking it into their own body. They can offer love without sacrificing their boundaries. In my language, the persona and shadow begin to integrate. The light no longer stands apart from the darker truths within. The empath's kindness becomes deeper because it is no longer performative. It comes from wholeness rather than fear. This transformation is not about becoming harder or less compassionate. It is about becoming free. The empath no longer enters relationships as a caretaker trying to earn safety. They enter as a whole person, able to give and receive without the silent terms of the old agreement. The moment the contract is broken, the dynamics around the empath change. They are no longer magnets for takers and manipulators. They draw people who respect boundaries, who are drawn to their light, not because it is exploitable, but because it is genuine. The dark contract, once broken, does not need to be replaced with a new one. The lesson is that the light was never the problem. It was the bargain hidden beneath it. When the empath steps out of the dark contract, the shift is not only internal. The world around them begins to respond differently. Relationships that once felt fixed in their imbalance start to reveal their true nature. The first reaction from others is often confusion. Those who were accustomed to the empath's constant giving cannot understand the change. They may push harder, testing boundaries, hoping the old version will return. This is not always malicious. It is habit. People grow used to certain roles. When one person steps out, the entire dynamic is disrupted. For those who thrived on the empath's overgiving, the reaction can be more intense. They may attempt to guilt, shame, or manipulate the empath back into compliance. Accusations of selfishness or coldness are common. These responses are not evidence that the empath is doing harm, but proof that the contract once served others more than it served them. At the same time, something else begins to happen. People who truly value the empath, who are capable of mutual care, will adjust. They will respect the new boundaries. They will meet the empath in their wholeness, even if it takes time to understand the change. At the same time, something else begins to happen. People who truly value the empath, who are capable of mutual care, will adjust. They will respect the new boundaries. They will meet the empath in their wholeness, even if it takes time to understand the change. The freed empath begins to notice a difference in the kinds of relationships they attract. Manipulative personalities lose interest because there is no longer an opening to exploit. In their place, more balanced individuals are drawn in. People who respect reciprocity, who are drawn to the empath's light without needing to consume it. On a broader level, the empath's presence in the world changes. Their energy is no longer thin, scattered, or quietly resentful. It is grounded. Their compassion has more weight because it is not entangled in an old bargain. This creates a subtle but powerful shift in how they are perceived. Some will be inspired by this transformation. They will sense that the empath's light is deeper, less fragile. Others will be unsettled because it challenges their own unconscious contracts. In both cases, the empath becomes a mirror, showing others what it looks like to live without hidden agreements. In my perspective, the freed empath embodies individuation, the integration of the self that no longer lives in fragments. Their light now includes the shadow that once fueled it. This wholeness creates a natural authority that cannot be faked or negotiated. The world will continue to test this new position, but the empath no longer reacts from fear of abandonment or rejection. The contract is gone. The light stands on its own. When the empath's light is freed from the dark contract, it changes in nature. It is no longer fragile. It no longer flickers in the presence of criticism or manipulation. It burns steadily, not because it must, but because it is natural. The light becomes something different when it is no longer tied to survival. It no longer needs to buy safety, love, or belonging. It no longer needs to be constant or perfect. It can rest. It can say no. It can exist without being drained. This is the paradox. The light becomes more powerful the moment it no longer feels obligated to shine for everyone. It becomes warmer, deeper, and more trustworthy because it is no longer entangled in fear. The empath can choose when and where to share it, and this choice makes it all the more meaningful. The world will notice those who were drawn to the old version of the light, the one tied to the contract, may drift away. But those who remain will be people who are not threatened by boundaries, who respect the light because they respect the person who carries it. In my language, this is integration. The empath has brought the unconscious bargain into awareness and dissolved it. They no longer live in the split between the persona, the mask of endless light, and the shadow that carried their unmet needs. The two have become whole. This wholeness is not about perfection, it is about truth. The empath no longer performs goodness to feel safe. They are good because it is authentic to their nature. And they can also be firm, protective, and self-respecting without fearing that it will cost them love. The dark contract was never their true nature, it was an early survival tool. Once it is seen for what it is, it can be set down. The empath's light remains, not as payment, but as expression. And this is what makes them unshakable. They no longer enter into silent bargains. They no longer measure their worth by the needs they can fulfill for others. Their light, now unbound, is steady in a way it never was before. In this state, the empath is no longer a figure of quiet exhaustion, but of quiet strength. And that strength comes not from resisting darkness, but from having walked through it, acknowledged it, and integrated it. The empath's light without the contract is the light of a whole person, and it needs no defense.